The Intercept that opened the gate, June 2025. After months of digital surveillance and cross-border coordination, British law enforcement made its move. What had started as an abstract EncroChat nickname, Steel Sun, suddenly had a face, a location, and a schedule. And on the morning of June 7th, as a rented Mercedes van cruised through Essex toward a private loading facility, officers struck. Inside the van was more than just another shipment. There were sealed crates marked as engineering equipment, but inside over 40 kilograms of high-purity cocaine shrink-wrapped in industrial film. Tucked under the driver's seat was a burner phone, silent, encrypted. It held dozens of message threads, coordinates, drop instructions, prices, and code names. But one detail stood out. A contact labeled JHDXB, James Harding, logged into EncroChat from Dubai. This wasn't a street-level operation. The cocaine bore markers from South American cartels, funneled through Spain and the Netherlands. The van was part of a routine, one of many that moved product through lightly monitored corridors between Kent, Essex, and Greater London. But this one was different. It tied together everything. James Harding had been on British radar for over 2 years. An ex-finance consultant turned digital broker, he relocated to Dubai in 2021. From there, authorities say he coordinated supply, orders, and distribution for a UK-based network of dealers. He didn't run corners. He ran code. Every order was logged, every shipment tagged. His communications were clean until the EncroChat network was compromised. And beneath Harding was a man who did the groundwork. Jace Harutyunyan, an Armenian British national operating from Manchester. Surveillance had already placed him near several key handoffs. Messages tied him directly to cash pickups, burner phone management, and what appeared to be contract discussions for debt enforcement, or worse. What started as a traffic intercept quickly became the central domino. Harding and Harutyunyan weren't middlemen. They were syndicate architects, the kind of criminals who leave no fingerprints, just metadata. And now the data was in police hands. The men behind the messages. James Harding, 34, wasn't your typical drug trafficker. He had no prior street reputation, no flashy videos, and no known gang ties in the UK. What he had was money, plenty of it, and a head for structure. Before the EncroChat takedown exposed his alias, Harding operated from a luxury villa in Dubai. He drove a Bugatti, spent weekends poolside at five-star resorts, and managed a drug network like a spreadsheet. His handle, the top sking, his operation. Large-scale, encrypted, invisible. In just under 2 months, Harding and his UK team moved over a ton of high-purity cocaine into the country. The logistics were tight. Custom crates, trusted couriers, precise landing zones. Every shipment was tracked through encrypted chat rooms. No names, no voice calls, just commands and receipts. Harding was obsessed with efficiency. Even violence was documented in messages, described like scheduled transactions. Then came his partner on the ground, Jace Harutyunyan, better known in encrypted circles as Best Tops. Harutyunyan had prior convictions for cocaine trafficking and had been deported once already. But he returned under aliases and stepped right back into the system, this time deeper. He handled the transport, the meetups, the hands-on side Harding paid to avoid. Harutyunyan wasn't just logistics, he was enforcement. Surveillance caught him discussing planned retaliation against a rival courier. Not arguments, executions. He had the vehicles, the drop phones, and the reach. Harding gave the orders from Dubai. Harutyunyan made sure they were carried out. Together, they didn't look like crime bosses. They looked like tech operators. They rarely left traces. They trusted silence, crypto, and code. But once EncroChat collapsed, so did their invisibility. Guns, crypto, and a hidden kill order. What separated Harding's operation from others wasn't just the drugs, it was the weapons. Buried inside chat threads, police uncovered something far more volatile than cocaine. Conversations about sourcing firearms, assembling cleaners, and issuing murder contracts. Harding didn't just control drug routes, he was ordering hits. Through encrypted apps, he described plans to eliminate rivals with military efficiency. In one exchange, he laid out how to double-tap a suspected thief using an untraceable weapon. Not a theory, a scheduled hit. It was to be carried out in Essex, and his instructions read like a logistics checklist. Vehicle, phone, gun, timing. The tone wasn't impulsive, it was clinical. Investigators found that Harding and Harutyunyan had been using cryptocurrency to move money across jurisdictions. Bitcoin and Monero wallets were tied to the payment of couriers, safe house operators, and weapon suppliers. One account received regular five-figure deposits shortly before conversations about planned murders. Another was flagged after being used to purchase encrypted devices and parts for a clean handgun. What made the case even more alarming was Harding's obsession with control. He didn't rely on street enforcement. He outsourced violence to professionals. Mentions of runners and foreign shooters came up frequently. The men didn't want to just dominate the market. They wanted to eliminate all opposition, and they were willing to pay for it. The network wasn't just digital, it was designed to be modular. Gun parts came in by mail, barrels and lowers delivered separately through shell companies. Some of the hardware was ordered from Eastern Europe. Other items, including suppressors and trigger assemblies, were sourced from US-based resellers using fake buyer identities. When investigators cross-referenced the chat logs with parcel tracking records, they found a near-perfect match. Dozens of imports, many labeled as machine parts, routed through a warehouse in South London. At that point, it wasn't just about cocaine anymore. This was a cartel with tech infrastructure, a distribution model, and a kill switch. The digital supply chain. Harding and Harutyunyan weren't building a gang. They were building infrastructure. From encrypted phones to private warehouses, the Syndicate operated more like a logistics firm than a street crew. Nothing was done casually. Everything was systemized. Each part of their network served a specific role. Harding coordinated the larger strategy from Dubai, often using secure Wi-Fi from luxury hotels or rental properties. He avoided voice communication entirely. All instructions came through PGP encrypted messages. Orders were tracked by nickname, not name. Shipping numbers were embedded in code. Even addresses were disguised, converted into numerical markers through GPS obfuscation. In the UK, Harutyunyan acted as the operations chief. He didn't carry product himself, but oversaw handoffs. He managed storage units across Greater Manchester and South London. Some rented under fake identities, others using third parties with no idea what was stored inside. Inside those units, crates of vacuum-sealed cocaine, parts for custom-built pistols, encrypted laptops, and burner phones still in packaging. Drugs moved in two routes, one overland, via courier vans and taxis, the other by commercial shipping channels, small crates listed as equipment or lighting supplies. Harding would time deliveries to avoid scans. He tracked which customs hubs were lenient and used insider contacts to shift inspection flags. Every box had tracking. Every delay triggered a backup plan. Gun parts came separately, small enough to avoid suspicion, common enough to pass through freight systems. Barrels, slides, frames, all shipped as industrial spares. Harutyunyan handled final assembly, usually with third-party labor. One of the seized locations had a bench vise, finishing tools, and plastic polymer frames. The weapons had no serial numbers, no registration, ghost guns. The network relied on silence. Each courier only knew one link in the chain. If someone got caught, they had no names, no locations, only codes and GPS drops. The system was designed to survive disruption, and for years it worked, until EncroChat gave them away, one decrypted message at a time. The collapse, surveillance, and seizure. For months, British law enforcement worked in silence. Following the EncroChat breach, investigators mapped aliases to faces, GPS pings to locations, shipments to real-world drop points. It was no longer just a list of usernames and code words. It was an active, living syndicate. The National Crime Agency led the investigation, supported by regional forces in Greater Manchester, Essex, and Kent. Phone data was matched with rental records, warehouse leases, and vehicle movements. Harutyunyan's cars were tracked through ANPR systems. One of them, used in a suspected cocaine drop, had made 7 late-night trips to a warehouse on the edge of Dartford. Every time the same pattern: in at 3 a.m., out by 4:15, never 2 nights in a row. The raid plan unfolded in stages. First came the Manchester Seizure, 2 vans and a house. Inside, 12 kilos of cocaine, 380,000 pounds in cash, a Glock-style pistol with no serial number, and a printed map with marked drop points. 2 encrypted devices were seized. One of them was still logged into an account under the alias Best Tops. In Dartford, officers stormed a warehouse at dawn. They expected cocaine. What they found was worse: 3D printed firearm components, imported barrels, polymer lowers, trigger kits, and dozens of prepped packages ready for distribution. Some crates were already labeled. The name on one shipping manifest matched a code seen weeks earlier in Harding's chats. By June 2025, the network was fractured. Harutyunyan was arrested in a Manchester flat. Harding, still in Dubai, was named publicly and charged in absentia. The United Arab Emirates issued a temporary freeze on his movement pending formal extradition. But Harding had prepared for disruption. Authorities believe he moved funds into cold storage wallets and handed partial control of the operation to backup lieutenants. Despite the busts, smaller shipments were still trying to move. The system didn't vanish, it staggered. And now, with Harding's digital empire exposed, investigators realized the operation they thought they'd mapped out was only one layer deep. Courtroom Reckoning. The courtroom was packed. By the time trial proceedings began in mid-2025, Harding's network had become a symbol of how technology, drugs, and violence had merged into a new kind of criminal model. Though James Harding remained in Dubai, his name dominated the indictment. In the UK, prosecutors moved forward with the men they had in custody, starting with Jace Harutyunyan. Facing overwhelming digital evidence, Harutyunyan chose to plead guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and possession of firearms. Prosecutors presented messages in which he described logistics with chilling precision. One chat thread, recovered from his encrypted phone, laid out drop times down to the minute and payment codes tied to specific kilos. Witnesses were not needed. The evidence lived in servers. Message chains were displayed in court like transcripts. Lines about cleaners, tools, 40 white by Friday were translated, cross-referenced, and verified. Harutyunyan offered no defense. He didn't speak during sentencing. He only looked down. The judge described the operation as a meticulously planned and digitally enabled criminal conspiracy that blurred the line between organized crime and enterprise software. Harutyunyan was sentenced to 22 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 14. Meanwhile, UK prosecutors issued a formal request for Harding's extradition from the UAE. Though his location had been frozen, Harding had not been arrested. He remained in Dubai, shielded by legal delays in a thicket of international appeals. Still, his messages were read into the court record. He referred to the UK team as his command branch and joked about exporting quality logistics back home. Authorities labeled him one of the most digitally sophisticated drug traffickers ever identified on British soil. They called the case a milestone, but it came with a warning: the architecture was replicable. Harding didn't invent the model, he just perfected it. And he wasn't the only one watching the outcome from a distance. Legacy of a ghost syndicate. By mid-2025, the Harding-Harutyunyan operation was dismantled, but not erased. The court sentences were final. The warehouses were sealed. The shipments halted. But the system they built left more than damage. It left a template. Law enforcement agencies across the UK and Europe now consider the Harding network a case study in next-generation drug logistics. They didn't control neighborhoods. They didn't flaunt gang colors. They used encryption, crypto, and remote coordination to move tons of cocaine and prepare targeted killings without stepping foot on British soil. Harding, as of June 2025, remains in Dubai, legally pinned but physically untouched. Investigators now believe their model has already been copied. New aliases on encrypted platforms, familiar logistics patterns, replacement lieutenants filling old channels. Some digital fingerprints match the original system. Others have evolved, Faster, more compartmentalized, harder to track. The ghost gun kits, the burner phones, the offshore coordination, none of it was theoretical. It was tested, refined, profitable, and in the hands of the next generation of traffickers, it could be far more dangerous. Harding didn't just build a drug empire, he proved one could be built invisibly. And that's what haunts investigators the most. Not what was found, but what's still out there, running the same code.